Hello and welcome to yet another guitar channel. I'm Anjay, and today we're going to be looking at in-ear monitoring systems, specifically the XVive U45. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what they are and why you might want one, and then I'll talk to you about the XVive U45. First of all, what is an in-ear monitoring system and why might you want one? So if you think about a band and you think about how sound is played out from a band. It could be pub band, you've got a couple of amps, singers on a microphone, and you've got a live drum kit and everyone just plays and the room hears it. Fine. You might be on what's called a silent stage, where there's you want more control of how loud things are. So rather than there being live amps, everyone goes into the mixer. You have an electric drum kit goes into the mixer, guitars, bass, singer, everything goes into the mixer, and then it comes out of the PA. Now in that situation, you're usually behind the PA speakers, so you don't hear much. So one option is you can have a wedge monitor, which kind of plays the sound back at your face, slightly defeating the quiet stage, or you can have an in-ear monitor, which we'll come into a second, or you might have a huge stage, everything's really loud, and you don't want to go deaf. And again, rather than just having ear protection, you'd have an in-ear monitor so that you could hear what's going on. So the way that it works is everything goes into a mixer, comes out into an in-ear monitor receiver of some sort, either plugged straight into the mixer or a wireless one like this one we're going to go through. And then you'll normally have on modern mixers, even for small bands, you'll often have them they'll have an iPad, and on the iPad they can choose how much the bass they want, how much of their guitar or whatever, how you want that mix to sound in your ears. And a lot of in-ear systems will also have some level of EQing as well, if they're kind of a bigger, bulkier one. And you'll be able to set how much kind of bass end you want, treble, middle, that kind of thing. But the upshot is that all of these are designed to ensure that you can hear what's being played without having to have external monitors of some sort. Now, usually an in-ear monitor is going to be kind of a specialized earpiece. You can get really expensive ones, really cheap ones, but they have different types of drivers in them to a standard pair of headphones, which allow you to hear more clearly what's really there, because most headphones will add bass or they'll do something clever to it. So it gives you a much better, more natural response. You can use ordinary headphones, you can use kind of cans, whatever you want, but it'll alter the way you hear everything. Like I said, you can be wired or wireless. Now, wired is fine, but it does mean that you do have this big wire trailing from your back all the way around to the mixer. So wireless is a bit more interesting. But the problem with wireless generally, if you have ever used Bluetooth headphones, you will notice that a Bluetooth headphone is never quite in sync with what you're watching. So wireless gear needs to be a bit more clever than that. And you'll have seen my recent reviews about wireless guitar and talking about different frequency ranges. So wireless gear will work on a particular wireless frequency and give you a much faster response. So milliseconds between what's being played and what you're hearing. So most people, but I think no one would ever really notice the difference with a decent in-ear monitoring system from hitting the guitar to hearing the sound, which is extremely important when you're playing live. Now, the XVive U45 is a very compact, very sort of neat little system that allows you to do all of that. You have two main pieces. You have a transmitter and you have a receiver. Transmitter goes into the mixer, plugs straight in. It's got a XLR plug on the back, or you can attach a jack to it and plug in that way. You then take your receiver, you plug your headphones into it, clip it onto your belt, put the headphones in, switch it all on, and away you go. And that's really it. And then with this system, all you've then really got to worry about is the volume. You can just change whether it's loud or not. These are rechargeable. They're both USB-C rechargeable, and it's literally just plug it in, and for the most part, it will just work. Now, there is one other thing you can change on the receiver and the transmitter, which is the channel that you're going to work on. And on the transmitter, you can also change whether you are going with a line output or a auxiliary output. So it just changes. It's a bit of a volume change, and it's also certain outputs need to be done at line level, certain outputs need to be done at an auxiliary level. When I said it's simple, I really do mean it. So you switch it on. So that's my receiver, and you'll see just a blue light. The blue light represents what channel I'm on. I'll then switch on my transmitter, and you'll see a green light appears on here. You'll see on the transmitter, there's also a little blue light that says 4 on it as well. So these are now paired. I can change the channel, double click, and we're now on channel 5. So I need to then double click the middle of this to set it to channel 5. So they are, again, paired and in sync. Now, demonstrating how this all works is quite difficult, in as much as, you know, I'd have headphones on and you wouldn't really hear much. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to set up, I've got my little XVive hub here, which I'm going to use as a mixer. I'm going to plug the transmitter into the mixer, and then I'm going to plug what will be the headphone output from this into my little amp here. So it's all set up. I've got the XVive hub set up so that I'm going straight into it, and then that is going to the transmitter online, and that is then being received by the receiver wirelessly. And I can change the volume. That's what it does, but it does it really well. And there's a few things that make it really kind of good compared to some of the ones I've tried. First one is it runs on 5.8 gigahertz rather than 2.4, so it has much less interference and actually can go further distance and through more things. So having your body in the way isn't going to cause a problem. Having the router, if you've got like a little Wi-Fi setup, isn't going to be a problem. It's also not bulky and not complicated. And I'm all for not bulky and not complicated, because when you're playing live, the worst thing that can happen with kind of clever gear is that it stops working and you have to jump through a million menus to get it working again. With this, if it's not working, I can physically switch it on and off. I can check if there's a problem with the battery, because there's a little battery light next to the green light that goes red when you're going low. I can also quickly change the channel that I'm working from. So I can quickly change my channel on here, and then change the channel on there, so that if there's any interference, then I can switch channels really quickly. And that's a godsend, because you're not spending 15 minutes trying to figure stuff out. You're not messing around with stuff. You're switching things on and off and pressing one button, maybe two. So again, that's really, really important. It's a very small receiver, which is nice, but it is very solid. Unplug that and switch it off now. So it feels solid. I think it's a lot of it is plastic, but it doesn't feel flimsy. It's heavy. It feels nice. The belt clip is solid. All the controls feel solid. Nothing feels like if you drop this, it's going to smash. And the same goes for the transmitter. The transmitter, again, you've got quite a lot of metal across it, quite a lot of plastic. The only thing on the transmitter that feels a little bit flimsy is the kind of the bit that holds the aerial. But again, the transmitter's not getting smashed around. This just gets plugged in and is left there. The receiver is really the thing that you get scared of when you're using it. And this is solid, and having used it live, it doesn't, you're not, and having used this live, I didn't feel worried about it falling off my belt. I didn't feel worried about dropping it because it's solid. And more importantly, the sound that it gave me when I was playing was clear and no interference and no delay, and sounded exactly how I expected it to sound. I didn't have to worry about EQ or anything like that. What went in is what came out. And again, that's really important because I don't have to mess around with it. I don't have to worry about settings for it. Switch it on, put the headphones in, and I'm good to go. Just get the volume right. So back to the original thing about why you might want in-ear monitoring. For me, it comes down to two different reasons. One is we're playing on a silent stage and we just can't have the volume. Two, we're likely to be playing loud, and I quite like being able to hear and not having tinnitus. Why wireless? Because I don't like having wires attached to me. I like to be able to move around, go out into the audience, that sort of thing. So I use a wireless guitar setup and I use a wireless in-ear monitor setup. Why the U45 from XVive in particular? Because it's compact, it's simple, and it just works. Plug it in, switch it on, and you're away. No messing around with it. Just make sure it's charged. It does come with a dual USB-C charger. So I always have either a battery pack or a USB plug with me so I can charge these sorts of things. So in between sets and before I start, these will be plugged in on charge just to be absolutely sure. Some people might argue that not being able to change a battery in it is a problem. I would argue I would rather recharge something than have to spend a fortune on replacing batteries in something. And having done both, I've only ever once run out of battery in a wireless thing whilst I was playing live. And in that instance, it was a wireless guitar setup, and I just plugged in with a cable for the rest of the set. So for me, rechargeable is better, simple is better, compact is better. So yeah, they're the reasons you might want to have wireless in-ear monitoring, and I do heartily recommend the XVive U45. Now, it is worth mentioning the price because despite it being little and compact, it isn't a toy. This is professional gear, and as such, it comes with a professional price of about £200. I think that it's worth the money. I've had no issues with it. It's solid. It works. The battery lasts really well. And I've had no interference, no sound problems with it. It just plugs in and works. So yes, that is expensive. But if you're playing live a lot and you want in-ear monitoring, it's better to spend more on it and have something that's going to work than go cheap on it and within a few gigs it's broken or it stopped working or the battery stopped charging or whatever. You don't need to spend a fortune on the actual in-ear monitors themselves, the headphone bit. My pair, I think, was about £45. You can use any headphones if you want to. If you don't want to spend loads of money on it, you've got a pair you want to use, great. Spend the money on the transmitter and the receiver, or on the wireless gear, because that's the bit that's more likely to cause problems down the line and be the thing that catches you out when you're playing live. So not a toy, not cheap, but it is a gigging musician's kind of price range for something that they can trust and rely on when they gig. So let me know what you think. Like I said, solid, Lovely piece of gear, not cheap, but in the price range of what a gigging musician would expect to be paying for decent gear if they want something that's going to last them a long time. They're going to be able to throw into their gig. They're going to be able to throw into their gig bag and not be scared of breaking it. Have you used one of these? Have you used any XVive stuff? I think it's great personally. Let me know in the comments, like, subscribe, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.